So this section here has more terms than normal. I'd encourage you as you do your homework, keep the notes out. So I want to kind of pile through some of these. First of all, a line. A line is going to be straight. I'm going to throw a comma in there, straight comma. And it goes, anyone?
Forever.
Nice, goes forever. So technically, lines are going to be things that have an arrow on both ends. So it should be straight with something like that. And I'm banking that you remember seeing it like this here. They'll put maybe a couple dots on there and put like an A and a B under each of the dots. And if we wanted to kind of write a symbol for that line, we do a AB with kind of the short arrow, double arrow thing over the top. Work for you guys?
Yes.
Cool. The difference between a line and a segment? Yeah, segment ends. So the way they defined it here is they said a part of a line between 2 points. So part of a line between 2 points. And I'll maybe do like my segment. Should we go with A and B again or pick some different letters?
C and D.
C and D. Rocking it old school. Do you guys remember CDs or are you too young for that?
I remember CDs, floppy disk.
Yes.
I have CDs.
So, okay. All right, sorry, I guess I'm not as outdated as I thought. But, okay, so CD, you could write it like that?
Everyone like yelled like.
Should have went back later. 8 tracks. Anybody remember an 8-track?
No.
Anybody remember a floppy disk?
So array. Array is kind of like half line, half segment, really. It's really just a line that goes one way or an arrow. So I'm going to say one endpoint. One endpoint, comma, goes forever in one direction. So goes forever in one direction. With this here, I'm going to take and have my arrow go to the left. And give me a couple letters on there.
T.
H and T.
Z.
Yes.
Interesting, H and T. So when we write the symbol for this, it doesn't matter if it points to the left. Just like in that first one, my line could have been going up and down. But when we do our symbol for array, the arrow above the letters always goes to the right. And now what do? Do I write HT underneath it or TH? TH, perfect. Good call, Aaron. Because it starts at T and goes through H and keeps going. So T has to be by the part that it kind of starts, and it goes past H and keeps going. We good for those? Perfect. Okay. A vertex. I'll start writing down the vertex thing. The notes are a little bit shoddy, but vertex is when 2 or more of, I'm just going to do an up arrow, meet. So when 2 lines meet, or a line and array, or a segment and another segment, or segment and a line. So when 2 of those things up above meet and form an angle. So down below, I have this top object, which you would call a array, or as Mrs. Vanderven would say, sweet baby. Ray. Okay. And then this here we have a segment. I'm going to throw some letters on there. So I'm going to put a A in the corner.
Oh, poor little A.
And I heard the letter Z and an I. So an I there. If you do the same letters as mine, it'll look random, but it'll be easier to write the next part. But I'm going to say this. That ray AZ, so I'm going to write AZ with the arrow over the top of it, meets the segment, which the segment is AI, right? So AI with kind of the bar over the top. At. So now the question is, how do we write that angle? There's 3 ways.
ZAI.
Nice, that'd be one. And probably my favorite is ZAI. So ZAI. And when you do that, you have to start and have A has to be in the middle. So ZAI, like a continuous path. So ZAI. Another way, Mr. Falk's second favorite would be perfect. So you start at I and just go the other direction. IAZ. And the last one, which you can get away with, but it's not nearly as pretty, is just say angle, one letter, angle A. That third one works in this case, but if I would have another something going off of A like this, now to call it angle A is kind of ambiguous. It's like which one is exactly angle A. Or if that was a line that kept going, you know, like that. But if you have it listed like one of these first two, then it's real clear. Oh, it's ZAI. That you know it has to be that there. I can keep going?
Yeah.
And I probably want to add that line in there that might make it kind of look ugly. But types of angles. You guys know this. Acute angles. If you look at an angle, you're like, oh, that's a acute angle. Perfect. Less than 90 degrees. Because often we think small things are cute, like my kids. Example. So you just want to draw something in there that has a less than 90 degree angle. I did something like that. A right angle. Perfect. 90 degrees. Right angle's 90 degrees. I'm maybe going to draw twice just to kind of prove a point. You can pick what you do in your notes, but I'm going to draw like a vertical and a horizontal line. What do they put there in the corner, or maybe I should say at the vertex? Yep, they put in like the little baby square.
So acute.
But it's not. It's right. It's not acute. So, okay. You could, if you wanted to, put another right angle just to show it doesn't have to be horizontal and vertical. It's up to you. That's pretty self-explanatory, but you got that. We okay on those? All right. Jump to page 2. Obtuse. So greater.
It echoed his voice in the speaker and said obtuse.
You're using the pointer, not the pencil.
Okay. Greater than.
You're using the pointer.
All right. Greater than 90 degrees. And just draw anything that's bigger than 90. Something like that. Next one. Did we do straight angles?
It's just a line. I did. It's just a line.
Perfect. So a straight angle is going to be I'm going to do my example first. So down below the equals, I'm going to do that there. I'm going to put a dot in the middle and hope that that kind of shows that there's an angle. But if I have this angle thing up here, how many degrees is that going to be?
180.
Perfect. So a straight angle technically is 180 degrees. And complementary and supplementary. Keeping those babies straight is half the challenge. Go for it.
How would you draw 360?
So complementary angles, two angles whose sum, when we say sum, are we adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? So adding a little plus there. Is how many degrees?
90 degrees.
90 degrees. So complementary angles, if you start out with a right angle, a 90-degree thing there. So drawing a couple rays that meet at a vertex, making a right angle. And then I would just draw something, if you kind of go more up than to the side like that, your numbers will maybe look kind of like my numbers. But we know this angle here, and I'm going to say that's, we'll say that's 70 degrees. I'm kind of guessing it's about 70. So how many degrees do I need to have right here to get me up to 90?
20.
20. So 90 minus 70 is 20. So we know then that 20 degrees and 70 degrees would be complementary angles because 20 plus 70 gives me my right angle, gives me my 90 degrees. Good? Supplementary angles are two angles whose sum
It's larger
is 180, whose sum is 180 degrees. So you could do a similar thing for your example, but instead of drawing a right angle, this time we do a, not just obtuse, it is, but a straight angle. Because a straight angle is going to be 180 degrees, right? And then I'm going to go a little bit less than 90. And I'm going to say over here I have an 80-degree angle. So if yours looks like mine, you can put in the 80. I can pick a different number, it's up to you. But if that's 80, what does my other side of that ray have to be? 100, yep. So 100 degrees and 80 degrees would be supplementary angles. But any two that add up to 180 would as well. So I wouldn't write this for you, but 130 and 50, if you add those together, you get 180. So those are also the supplementary. It seems to me like for most people, remembering which one's complementary, which one's supplementary is the biggest problem. Here's how I came up with it in my head. If you think of it alphabetically, I can't talk and spell alphabetically at the same time. But alphabetically, do you agree C comes before S?
Yes.
And numerically, as you're counting, what comes first, 90 or 180? 90. So I just remember the first one alphabetically is with the first one number-wise. The C is with the 90. The S is with the 180. Maybe that'll work for you. Maybe it won't. But I tried. Angle bisector. When you dissect something, like some people dissected the fetal pigs this year, you took and you cut, or chicken wing, dissected chicken wings. So you cut it when you dissect it, right? But now we're going to bisect it, and bi means two. So we're going to cut it, but it's going to have two equal parts. So cut it in half. So this here is a ray that divides an angle into two. Now math. Do you guys remember the fancy math word for equal in geometry? Instead of saying equal, we say nice. To two congruent. And the symbol for congruent is it equals with the squiggly. I think it's a tilde technically, but that's the sign for congruent. Angles. I try to squeeze angles there on the end. Angles. And this here is the symbol. But basically, congruent, when you're talking about congruent, it just means equal. So we'll use that word congruent. When we talk about congruent angles, we mean two angles that are equal, two angles with the same number of degrees. Or congruent segments, it's going to be two line segments that are the same length. They're equal in length. So. Ready for page 3? We're getting close. Oh, angle bisector. You need to do the drawing first. So if we draw an angle on there, and a lot of times my drawing of bisectors looks pretty bad. I found I do better if I try to put a dot kind of in the middle. Still sometimes doesn't look the greatest, but so you could do something like this. And I want to use this as an excuse to use that congruent symbol and kind of review angles. So I'm going to put 4 dots on there. So kind of a dot in the vertex here at the corner, then a dot on each of my rays. Give me some letters. H, Q, T, and Y. All right, so we got them all. So if you want to fill yours in like that, H, Q, T, and Y. I have no idea why they picked that. So, all right, so our bisector is going to be what ray? Which of those rays is the bisector?
T.
Q, T. Yep. So I'm going to say QT then, because it starts at Q. Because that could be a little awkward, couldn't it? QT bisects.
Angle.
Nice. Angle HQY. So what we're trying to say QT, this middle ray, bisects this angle HQY if, or maybe I should say if is shorter. You could say because, you could say if. Now this angle here should be equal to this angle here, but we don't say equal, we say congruent. Yep, so how do I say this angle here? This angle is HQT. Then we do the congruent sign, the equals with the tilde or the equals with the squiggly above it. Angle, I mean, you say this angle here, which you would write?
TQY.
Nice, TQY. And just make sure we're all on the same page. You could switch the H and the T and the T and the Y. You just have to make sure Q's in the middle. So. All right, we're getting close to being done. Any questions on those? Seems like you're getting it. And we're having a whole lot of fun along the way. So, okay. Congruent objects. If congruent means equal or the same, if we have congruent objects, they have to look exactly the same. And if they're going to look exactly the same, they have to have congruent angles or equal angles and equal or congruent like parts, like corresponding sides. So I'm going to say have the same size and shape. But by that, basically, we mean, I'm going to say equal angles. I probably should say congruent. I'll change it to congruent. But the angles have to be the same, equal, congruent. And the sides are also going to be congruent. Now, they don't all have to be identical. And here's where I should just stop the notes because my drawing is probably going to be bad. But like if I were to have something like this here. So then you'll notice in that drawing the sides aren't all congruent with each other. But if I try to draw, the exact same thing here, I've done worse for sure. But like this side here has to be congruent with that side. And then they'll do 2 hash marks on the next one to show this side here is congruent with this side. And this side here is congruent with that side. Then you can go through and do the same thing for the angles. So all the sides don't have to be congruent or equal with each other, but the ones that kind of line up the corresponding sides have to be. And this angle would have to be the same as that angle. This angle, same as that angle. That's all I got for you. Feel okay on the section?